Amidst the poignant narrative of Jesus' final journey to the cross, we are confronted with the profound stress he faced. Many may assume this path was easy for him, but nothing could be further from the truth. If it were easy, the significance of his sacrifice would be underestimated. Instead, we witness Jesus overwhelmed by profound sorrow on the brink of death. Picture yourself in this distressing situation, about to face one of the most painful deaths, surrounded by imminent humiliation and insults, with those who would arrest him approaching. Luke's account takes us from Jesus' deep prayer in Gethsemane, where his faith in God is reaffirmed, to his burial. The Bible guides us through the final steps of an innocent man who chose to die for others. Each of the Gospels presents us with a vivid narrative of the time Jesus spent in the Garden of Gethsemane with his disciple, crucial moments before his arrest. It is an account of deep agony and surrender. Jesus, in anguish, prostrates himself and prays to his Father, crying out, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." Matthew 26:39. He repeats this plea, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." Matthew 26:42. These words echo through the centuries, revealing Jesus' deep submission to the divine plan even in the face of imminent suffering. The cup he refers to symbolizes the suffering he was about to endure. In Matthew 20:22, Jesus addresses the theme of suffering by asking the disciples, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink?" He said to him, "We are able." This question resonates in all of our souls. When Jesus prays to the Father pleading, "Let this cup pass from me," he is expressing the natural human longing to avoid pain and suffering. This is the raw humanity of Christ, evidencing his profound understanding of human struggles. Jesus, being fully God, is also fully human. Even in his divine perfection, his human nature faced the agony of accepting the torture and shame that awaited him. His flesh recoiled at the prospect of the cross. In a moment of profound vulnerability, he shared with his disciples, "Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Matthew 26:41. This is a truth that resonates within all of us, the battle between the willing spirit and the weak flesh. When Jesus cried out, "Let this cup pass from me," he was confronting human desires for self-preservation and comfort. This struggle was intense, marked by sorrow unto death. He confided in his disciples, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." Matthew 26:38. These words echo through the ages, revealing the agony he endured in his humanity. This prayer vividly illustrates that Jesus was fully human in every sense. He had full knowledge of what was to come, as recorded in Mark 8:31. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He taught his followers about the necessity of suffering, rejection, and death, but also about the promise of resurrection after 3 days. The torment he was destined to endure went beyond the physical. It was also mental and spiritual. Jesus knew that the crucifixion was the divine plan, the means by which he would be wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our healing. He knew this was aligned with God's will, as described in Isaiah 53:5-7. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned, everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. These prophecies were fulfilled in Jesus, who, like a silent lamb before his shearers, accepted the fate assigned to him for our redemption. These profound truths echo through the pages of history and resonate in our hearts to this day. Jesus' love for humanity is immeasurable, but his humanity also feared the pain and sorrow that lay ahead, leading him to cry out to his Father, "Let this cup pass from me." This phrase, laden with meaning, reveals two essential aspects. Firstly, Jesus begins his prayer with the words, "If it is possible," pleading with the Father, seeking an alternative for humanity's redemption, if there were one. Jesus did not desire to face death, ultimately submitted his will to the Father's. The events that followed his prayer make it clear that there was no other possible path. The sacrifice of Jesus Christ is singular and unparalleled, being the only one capable of redeeming the world, proclaimed in John 1:29. The next day he saw Jesus coming toward him and said, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." The book of Revelation in chapter 5-9 resounds with a glorious song of redemption, proclaiming, "Worthy are you to take the scroll and to open its seals, for you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation." This reminds us of Jesus' ultimate sacrifice, which brought redemption to all of humanity. Additionally, Jesus expresses in his prayer, "Yet not what I will, but what you will." He was fully committed to God's will in every aspect of his existence, body, mind, and soul. This is the essence of the prayer of the righteous, always submitting to God's will, as taught in Matthew 6:10. "Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven." In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus conquered the flesh, keeping it submissive to the Spirit. He achieved this by completely surrendering to God's will, even when it was difficult. Our own difficult moments become more bearable when we understand that Jesus understood the desire to follow God's will, even when it was difficult. He understood the conflict between the will of the flesh and the will of God, and this offers us comfort and encouragement. This struggle is not sinful, rather a normal part of the human experience, showing us that true victory lies in submitting to the divine will, even when it is challenging. Our Redeemer, Jesus Christ, fully assumed human nature in all respects, as reminded in Hebrews 2:17. Therefore he had to be made like his brothers in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the service of God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. He became a merciful and faithful high priest, able to make atonement for the sins of the people, wiping away sin and providing reconciliation between God and humanity. Jesus came with a clear mission to seek and save the lost. He succeeded in completing this mission, even if it required him to drink to the dregs the cup of suffering. His prayer reveals the depth and quality of his relationship with the Father. It was an extremely difficult ordeal, as evidenced by the profound agony and almost mortal anguish he faced in the garden, as described in Luke 22:43-44. "And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground." As Jesus struggled in prayer, his disciples, unable to fully grasp the gravity of the situation, fell asleep. An angel came from heaven to strengthen him in this crucial moment. Upon rising from prayer, Jesus found his disciples sleeping from sorrow and exhorted them, "Why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation." Luke 22:45. These words echo to this day, reminding us of the importance of spiritual vigilance, even in the most challenging moments. The appearance of an angel to comfort Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane is profoundly significant. It symbolizes heaven's willingness to stand by Jesus as he faces his calling, even in the face of imminent rejection and death. Jesus entrusts his burdens to God. This is a deeply human portrayal of Jesus dealing with a range of emotions as he faces his own death. Luke, in depicting Jesus this way, does not diminish his divinity. He shows us a Jesus who can relate to our weaknesses and traumas, as stated in Hebrews 4:15. "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin." These verses reveal the character of Jesus and show us how we can face the great trials of life God sends us. They present to us a man who relies completely on God and is determined to do his will, even in the face of the most difficult circumstance. This is a source of encouragement and inspiration for all of us, showing that, like Jesus, we can trust in God amidst adversities and remain steadfast in his will. We observe an individual grappling with difficulties, seeking comfort and guidance in God, and another channeling deep emotions through prayer to God. Jesus also undergoes this challenge, receiving not redemption but the strength needed to overcome it. Questions the possibility of another way, yet manifests his resolve to adhere to God's will. Ultimately, he concludes with the phrase, "Yet not what I will, but what you will." Mark 14:36. The final hours of Jesus' life on earth offer a glimpse into his heart, showing us a Jesus who feels emotions, expresses them, seeks the Father's comfort. In the stillness of the Garden of Gethsemane, air was heavy with anticipation. Jesus, the Son of God, had brought his disciples to this quiet place to pray. The moonlight filtered through the olive trees, casting long, eerie shadows on the ground. The disciples, weary from the day's events, struggled to stay awake as Jesus moved a short distance away to pray alone. Kneeling on the cool earth, Jesus felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. He knew what lay ahead: the betrayal, the suffering, and the crucifixion. His heart ached with sorrow, and his mind was tormented by the knowledge of the pain he would endure. He began to pray, his voice trembling with emotion. "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." As he prayed, sweat poured from his forehead like drops of blood, a testament to the intensity of his anguish. The enormity of what he was about to face overwhelmed him. Yet he remained resolute in his mission. He knew that this was the path he had to take to redeem humanity, offer salvation to a lost and broken world. After some time, Jesus rose and walked back to his disciples. He found them asleep, their bodies giving in to exhaustion. "Could you not keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked, his voice tinged with disappointment. "Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Returning to his place of prayer, Jesus fell to the ground once more. "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done," he prayed, submitting completely to the Father's plan. His agony was profound, but so was his love for humanity. He knew that his sacrifice was the only way to bridge the chasm between God and man. As he prayed, an angel appeared from heaven to strengthen him. The angel's presence was a comforting reminder that he was not alone, that heaven was with him in this darkest hour. Bolstered by the angel's support, Jesus continued to pray, finding solace in his communion with the Father. When he returned to the disciples a second time, he found them again asleep, their eyes heavy with fatigue. Despite their inability to stay awake, Jesus did not rebuke them harshly. Instead, he understood their human frailty and the struggle between the spirit and the flesh. The third time Jesus prayed, his resolve was unwavering. He had fully surrendered to the Father's will, embracing the suffering that lay ahead. As he finished praying, he returned to his disciples and said, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." As he spoke, a group of soldiers led by Judas Iscariot approached. Judas, one of Jesus' own disciples, had agreed to betray him for 30 pieces of silver. He had told the soldiers, "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Stepping forward, Judas greeted Jesus with a kiss. "Greetings, Rabbi," he said. Jesus looked at Judas with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "Friend, do what you came to do," he replied. The soldiers seized Jesus, and the disciples, now fully awake and fearful, scattered in all directions. Peter, in a moment of rash bravery, drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. But Jesus intervened, saying, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels?" With that, Jesus healed the servant's ear, demonstrating his unwavering commitment to peace and mercy, even in the face of betrayal and arrest. He willingly allowed himself to be taken away, knowing that this was the path laid out for him by the Father. As Jesus was led away, his heart was heavy, but his spirit was steadfast. He knew that his sacrifice would pave the way for humanity's redemption. In the silence of that garden, amidst the rustling of leaves and the distant sounds of the approaching dawn, the Son of God began his final journey to the cross, a journey that would change the course of history forever.